How do you prevent a toxic work environment? The truth is that if you're not taking action to prevent it, a toxic work environment can develop at any business. The good news is that there are specific actions you can take right now to prevent this from happening at your company. In this episode, we'll give you the 5 ways to prevent a toxic work environment. Welcome back to the Bootstrappers Show, the podcast that helps entrepreneurs scale their businesses with remote teams. I'm your host, Gwenn Aspen, with my co-host, husband, and co-founder of Anequim, Jeremy Aspen, and we've helped hundreds of companies with highly skilled virtual assistants. So we're talking about the 5 ways remote professionals can fix toxic cultures at your business. So we've had businesses where we work mostly remotely and mostly in office, and I, for one, really prefer the remote work.
I like remote work, one for the freedom to do what you want. But yeah, and we've been working with the remote staff since 2006, I think.
No, 2008
with Veronica, our first employee, and there are some things that really you can actually use to help make sure that the environment in your company is far less toxic. And one of those ways, sexual harassment. Like,
oh my gosh,
seems like maybe that's too nuanced and stuff, but and it's not a complete. You're not going to get rid of sexual harassment totally, because you can still offend people by having sexual innuendo, making them uncomfortable,
or sending
verbally
terrible memes.
Yeah, sending dick pics and stuff like that. Don't do that. But there's also no room for misinterpretation of touch or hugs, kisses, anything like that, because obviously there's not 2 physical people in the same room together, and that takes care of a big chunk.
Can I tell a funny
potential
story?
Sexual harassment. Yeah.
So at Wistar Group, we had all the generations. We had a 20-year-old all the way up to an 80-year-old sales guy. And I remember we had a consultant come in and talk about sexual harassment and how working with intergenerationally, some of the things that the older guys think, don't translate well to like the younger people. And so the humor is different. She did a lovely job. So I was sitting in this training. I thought it was great. I was like, we're going to be doing better. And as soon as she left, she had a sheet that we all had to sign just to be like, yes, we received this training. And she was going to give it to me. And then right afterwards, one of the maintenance guys was like, hey, I got a joke for you. And it was a total sexual charged joke. And I was like, did we not just do this training, you guys? We just did this training.
So none of that. You do still have to be careful again. Like, I was in a meeting probably about 2 weeks ago, and someone brought up something sexual. I was like, no, damn it. I mean, it wasn't like they're like, hey, you want to do it? But they were, they were, it was just not perfectly appropriate. And I was like, oh, okay, well. So it's not a fail-safe.
Right.
Although it is fail-safe in terms of litigation. Probably.
It's not fail-safe. No. I mean, even in those terms, you can still intimidate people using your words, emails, all the ways. I mean,
you can create a toxic environment.
But it's still so much better and easier to manage people when you're remote in that capacity.
And so then kind of dovetailing into a number 2, I would say processes and procedures, because the whole organization is necessarily dependent on there being the better. An organization is stronger if it's working remote, so long as it has methodology, kind of a strict methodology to help ensure that you know what the person is doing and how they're doing it, and especially with the bookends for time, so you can kind of understand how they're doing time-wise. So just having those processes and procedures and that necessary structure prevents a whole bunch of
toxic problems,
potential toxic issues. Yeah,
I agree. So a lot of issues where employees get mad at each other is like when you're getting in their lane, or micromanagement or things like that. And I think having really good processes and procedures written down, which remote work requires, it requires you to do best practices. For example, when you're working in an office and you overhear someone being rude to a tenant or an owner, you're like, overhearing it, and that's how you give them the feedback. But when you're working remote, you have to have call monitoring forms or a call monitoring process. And so the feedback is more organized and clear. And when you use processes and procedures to manage people, you are less likely to get those nepotism, or you're unfair, you're managing them differently than you're managing me. All those kinds of things that happen in an office just aren't as prevalent
at all. Yeah. Part and parcel to that is huddles, or, having regular meetings, because if you have a remote team, you're more than likely going to have regularly scheduled meetings. I would suggest video meetings on a daily basis, so you can get an understanding of what they did yesterday, what they're doing today, and what the obstacles are, so that you as that team can kind of help organize whatever needs to be done to help someone not have an obstacle. That's partially, kind of already covered in processes and procedures, but having those regular meetings in that way helps to reduce the potential misinterpretation of expectations, because it's some sort of a regular contact that they're going to have with their peers and, if you're doing it right, their boss, which is on the call.
Yeah, and in that huddle, you can do the niceties like that you would have at the water cooler, like, hey, what's good news? What'd you do yesterday? Oh, I made cucumber ice cream. Oh, that sounds exciting. So you can make the boring seem exciting and have those niceties. And I lean into that 5 minutes of wasted time, because, well, I don't think it's wasting time. And if you look at your people, that might be the only time, if they have a really operational role or they have a marketing role where they're mostly just alone all day, that might be the only time they talk to anybody at work. So taking 5 minutes to just talk about the salsa lesson or the football team or driving your kids to Taekwondo is completely useful. And you can also manage that, to Jeremy's point, with bookends. So you're not saying anything inappropriate in those 5 minutes of banter, because you're on a call that has a point, has a beginning time and end time. So you're not wasting extra time, and you're going to be appropriate in those 5 minutes. I mean, it just creates an environment where people aren't ridiculous.
Yeah, they're ridiculous. They kind of appreciate the time because it is condensed. It's not like you have to come up with small talk. One of the things we do in ours is yesterday's biggest success. And that's kind of a nice one too, because then you kind of start the meeting off with, okay, well, here's what I did, and able to kind of gloat a little bit and give, hey, congratulations, good work. And then we go into today. Like, what are you going to be working on today? Do you need anything from us? Okay, let's do it. And it's just such a nice, clear way to articulate what's been done and what expectations are for the day.
And that keeps it pretty work focused, where you can't get in too much trouble with the toxic approach.
Yeah. I think this one, well, actually, you brought up the water cooler. So that's another way that you can kind of control toxicity in the company. There's the water cooler talk that Gwenn brought about, but kind of expanding on it a little bit to preserve people's time, like the quality of time they have at work. Back in the day, not that long ago, pre-pandemic, people wanted to play ping pong
at work.
They wanted to drink beer at work. I don't think that's true. I mean, I went into some of those workspaces, those things where they had ping pong tables and stuff, or pool tables. And I just never had an experience where people were like, hey, you want to play pool? Or you want to play ping pong?
During work?
No, I don't. And I mean, I get the idea that, keep people at the office and build established relationships and everything. But I think at the end of the day, I know that company you used to work at, they had as much as they could do to make it so you didn't have to leave the campus. So you made work more a part of your life. Like they had dry cleaning and everything on campus. People want to go home.
Well, they did it at Cerner, but there were so many HR issues at that company.
Oh, yeah.
That was an HR.
Although you got to be careful with the
I'm just saying. It's true. At the time, this is a bazillion years ago, in my opinion.
There you go.
There were a ton of HR issues at that company. And so here's the deal. If you are playing ping pong and drinking beer at work, people are going to unnecessarily touch each other.
Yeah. That could be misinterpreted because, of course,
or not misinterpreted.
Or not misinterpreted.
A poor choice.
You're just drunk and now you make poor
anyway,
choices.
Here's my thing. I think after the pandemic, like that was a pre-pandemic thing, like, oh, work forever. Go home at 8:00. I don't think anyone wants that anymore. The restaurants are telling us that people want to go to bed at a reasonable hour because even dinner reservations are earlier. People don't want to do as much socializing after work. If you ask any event planners, the events that they're planning are much shorter. And also, people want to be more focused at work, get their stuff done. And I think that's the trend that we're seeing, which is great for non-toxic environments and also is in line with this remote work where people just want to focus 8 to 5 and get their stuff done and then be out the door and live their life. And I think that's good for a functional work environment. People talked about we're a family at work. For so long, you're not a family. Like, it's just not true. Let's not lie to each other. We're here to get a job done. We're here to accomplish big goals and, big vision. But you're supposed to have a life outside this.
Yeah, if you're a purpose-driven company especially, then allowing your employees to have a more distilled environment to be able to accomplish the purpose would necessarily not have as many weird little interactions like ping pong and beer, because that's not part of your purpose. That's not what the objective of their day is supposed to be. They need to be able to spend energy, spend their time doing the things that helps the company accomplish its purpose, not dicking around, playing pool. And that one, yeah. So,
well, and I think people are confused because that wasn't that long ago that was the ideal. And so now sentiments have changed. This sentiment that no one wants to hang out at work till 8:00 at night and waste an hour in the middle playing ping pong is fantastic for remote work. Remote work isn't going to reduce your culture, which is the fear, because you don't have that. No one wants to do that anyway. So just if you're worried that you don't have culture because you don't have a ping pong table because everyone's remote, just take that off your worry list because no one wants that crap anymore anyway.
And the family thing, it's probably worth mentioning. So in South America, when I was down there back in the 90s, there's this understood rule that, it's the indigenous population that's usually serving as the maids, and you are supposed to take them and their families as your own, as a family member. But it breaks down, and it's largely true. I mean, the family that is hiring them pays for their school and all that. It's similar. It's kind of like a work relationship, because the moment there's a large infraction, like they steal, like in my case, someone stole money from me, they're gone. So, and if it's truly family, they're not gone. And so that's just kind of a way to distinguish the difference between, are you a family or are you like a coherent group of professionals that have a single purpose to work together and make the world a little bit better? It's substantial. You don't have to be family members or act like family in order to
have a strong culture.
To have a very, very strong culture.
Yeah.
The other one's kind of funny. It's personal habits. So
so this is like, we're saying that personal habits is one of the things that is good about remote work, is you don't have to deal with someone's disgusting food in the microwave. I mean, people are kind of gross. Like, people clip their nails at the office. No, thank you. Please do that at home. And so these things really cause legitimate problems in an office environment.
Yeah, especially if you're a really bad farter. But your neighbor has, or say, stink or something. It's just one less thing to worry about. You're not going to run into that. You can be a super farter on the other side of a camera. It just doesn't matter. It's not going to affect business or anything. People won't have to leave the room just to let it air out. It's not like that's ever happened, but
Well, when you hire people, you don't ask about those things. That's the kind of stuff you find out about later once they're in your office 8 hours a day and you're like, no fish. No fish in the microwave.
No fish.
Why are you discussing, like, put your dishes away? Like, how many offices you're like have a big sign that's like, put your dishes away, because people are jerks.
You're in charge of your own dishes. Yeah, right. Yeah, they're not in charge of their own dishes. They're gonna let somebody once in a while do their own dishes. Coffee,
What is it? Tragedy of the commons.
Yeah, like you're not gonna have this like perfectly pure environment where it's like, oh, I cleaned this fork, or I ate with this fork, I'm gonna clean it up. Now usually they're gonna put it in the sink, and then hopefully someone's just like, gotta clean this up. That's always what happens,
and it's the worst. So anyway, you don't have that causing conflict in your office.
So
if you work remotely.
And so, I mean, real quick, sexual harassment, not an issue. You got to have processes and procedures to help make sure that your company is streamlined and everybody can operate remotely anyway. And this remote work almost forces that issue, which will make your company much stronger. Huddles and the structure of meetings and the contact points you actually have with that person are more distilled because they have a purpose. You know every day what it is you're going to be talking about, or every week in the case of a level 10. If you know what I'm talking about, look up EOS. Those are things that help make sure that the communication with everybody is more refined and less subject to confusion. Personal habits, Bobby B.O. isn't going to be causing you any problems. And the water cooler talk, the ping pong tables, the stuff like that, are not having that around, not feeling like some sort of attraction that is either being neglected or something someone has to do once in a while just to use that 40 square foot of space in the office. Not something you have to concern yourself with. And also just so happens people don't really, I haven't seen any studies, I don't think they even want it.
Well, one other thing that I think is really important to mention is nefarious activity has statistically been down with remote work. They did a study on bankers, and bankers commit less fraud when they work remotely by 5 times. 5 times less fraud.
Oh, and
so when you don't have a friend who's like in a cubicle next to you, you can't like come up with a nefarious idea to defraud the company as easily as what that study showed.
And I think we can back that up anecdotally. So of our 1,200 employees over the course of since the last 5-6 years we've been in business, we've had one instance of there being like legitimate fraud, but that's one person out of that many.
This is over, if you take it since 2008 when we started doing this.
Then yeah.
I mean, we've only had one case of someone using a credit card in an unauthorized way. Just happened once. And that's a big concern for people. Oh, if I hire people remotely, there's going to be a bunch of fraud. And that's just not our experience.
At all.
So anyway, remote work doesn't make your environment less toxic, or doesn't make your environment toxic. It actually improves your environment, improves your communication, improves your processes and procedures, and makes for less drama at work, and prevents, in most cases, a toxic environment.
And the fact of the matter is that remote work is here to stay forever. And so just so you know, if you haven't taken that leap yet, it's only a leap about this high and very low risk with a lot of upside.
Team building is essential to preventing a toxic work environment and building a successful business. We put together 20 ways to build team synergy and empower your remote teams, and you can download it for free. The link is in the show notes.